You checking me out? You checking me out? Hi there. We're going to talk snake behavior today a little bit more, and we're going to clear up some of the more controversial things that I've said in past videos. I don't think I'm very controversial, but I'd probably have more subscribers if I said crazier stuff. Maybe I should say crazy things and get more. Welcome to the Green Room. I'm Bob Bledsoe. This is Lydia Dietz, my clown het pied, and this is Delilah, my freeway, pastel freeway. I have them out just because I thought, hey, I'll bring out two snakes for the intro. There have been a couple of things that have happened recently that made me think I should do another video on snake behavior, plus people keep asking for it. So that's what we're doing today. Say hello to my brother Kent. He is our cameraman, and Kent is learning about snake behavior just by being here each week. One time a snake looked at me. That was bad. If you saw my video maybe a month or so ago about taking snakes outside, you saw that I talked extensively about how I don't think that snakes should be brought out into public. And I knew when I made that video that there would be people that disagree with me. I explained how I came to those conclusions. I think that it stresses out the snake, number one, but it also stresses out people. There are people that are very afraid of snakes, and you're not providing a learning opportunity for those people. There will be people that will come up and ask you about your snakes, and you can tell them all about them, and that's a learning opportunity. But for those who are afraid of snakes, they're just going to avoid you. So I talk about that whole thing in the video, and I knew when I made that video that there was going to be people that disagree with me, because there's a lot of people who love to bring their snakes out in public and show them off or whatever, and that's okay. I'm okay with people disagreeing with me on, you know, snake care or my thoughts on snake behavior or human behavior or whatever, and I like hearing different people's perspective on it. I did hear from some people after that video saying that they love to take their snake out in public and their snake loves to be in public. We're gonna talk about that particular statement in a second, and that they do think that they're providing education to people that are afraid of snakes. That's cool if you disagree with me. I just like to give my thoughts on things. A lot of times it's an opinion. There are a lot of facts that I share on this channel, but I also share a lot of my opinions. And it's totally okay if you disagree with me. I just try to share my opinions and then share sort of how I came to those conclusions. I also want to say that if you're an advanced keeper, a lot of the things that I talk about or the general rules may not apply to you and your snake. If you know the subtleties of snake body language really well and you know your snakes really well, you can bend a lot of those rules. So, for example, you know, most people say, don't move a snake to feed it. Don't feed it in a separate enclosure because it could risk regurgitation. I also say there's no reason to move to a separate enclosure, but that's beside the point. Are you two getting tangled up? What's happening here? My point is that for my snakes, for example, I know that they are not skittish. They're not brand new hatchlings. They're all very socialized, and handling them or picking them up and moving them doesn't really stress them out at all. So let's say somebody was paying me a lot of money to feed my snakes in a separate enclosure. I'd go, sure, I'll feed, yeah, bring me the pile of money and I will feed my snakes in a separate enclosure. I know that it would be no danger to my snakes. I would not have a regurgitation, I don't think, if I fed them in a separate enclosure and then moved them. And probably all my snakes would eat. But I know my snakes really well, and I have very well socialized snakes. So, you know, there are people that take their snakes out in public. Now, aside from the problem that I have with it frightening people, there are people that take their snakes out in public and their snakes do just fine. And we're going to talk about an example that I just had about that in a minute. But Alice Cooper brings a boa, I think it's a boa constrictor, on stage with him. He's got this boa that he brings on stage. My guess is that may have frightened the boa at first in the beginning of its life, but my guess is that boa has been on stage with all the noise and lights and everything like that so many times now that he's probably accustomed to it. And he's probably not stressing out like crazy because he does it a lot. Might have been stressful during the period of time that he had to get used to it, but you know. So anyway, if you're an advanced keeper and you know your snakes, some rules might not apply to you. Okay, I just put Lydia Dietz back because I want to have a free hand to talk with, I guess. But before we continue, let's cut to Kent's Corner. Hi, I'm Kent's Corner. I mean Kent. I'm Kent, and that's just the corner. But today I'm here to talk to you about what to do if you encounter a snake in the wild. As we all know, if it's a snake, it wants to kill you. So you have to curl up on the ground and play dead so that it thinks that some other snake has already gotten to you, and it'll go, oh, that person's already dead thanks to another snake. I'll go find different people to kill. This might take a while though, so you have to stay on the ground with your head protected for at least half an hour to an hour. You'll know that it's time to check to see if the snake is gone if there are too many ants biting your legs. And try not to wet yourself, because if you do, it's going to be a very uncomfortable walk back to the cabin, and Mother will not be proud of you. Thank you for watching Kent's Corner. That happened a long time ago, Kent. I think you were only like 19 at the time. 22. It's still good advice. Okay, here's a really good example of two snakes that fit in both ends of the spectrum. These are snakes that I encountered just last week. I was in Utah last week for a 4-day festival. While I was there, I encountered only 2 people with snakes, this was a Renaissance fair, and to only see 2 people with snakes in 4 days is not very many. So that's good. But the first person with the snake, she had a ball python who was a little boy, and she had him around her neck. He was a beautiful little normal, and he seemed totally chill. He wasn't expressing any signs of stress, and the owner seemed like an advanced keeper. So whenever I see a snake at a festival, I usually come up and compliment the person on their snake, and I want to handle it and whatever. I never give them my thoughts on taking your snake in public or anything like that, because they're not asking for my opinion. They're not asking to be counseled on what they should do with their snake. So I never would offer that information. And I think she was doing fine with her snake. It was a really cool, chill snake that was slowly tongue flicking and totally fine with me handling the snake, And also, when I saw her and chatted with her and saw her in her snake, I never saw her again at that festival. So I think she left she wasn't there for very long. So that's a good thing too. Now the next snake that I saw was a rosy boa, and I saw this woman with a rosy boa on her neck all day the first day, and then she was there all day the second day, and then I saw her all day the third day with her rosy boa, and on the fourth day, I had the opportunity to approach her and compliment her on her beautiful snake and talk to her about it, and handle it. Not talk to her about. I did end up dropping some hints. Okay, I'll tell you. So here's what happened. She's got this rosy boa around her neck, and I went up and I was like, oh, let me see that beautiful rosy boa. And I called it by name. I identified the snake so that she knew that I know a bit about snakes. And she handed him to me right away, and he was hot, you guys. He was very warm. He was sitting on her neck, so that's at least 98.6, but also in the heat of the day, for 4 days all day, by the way, in the heat of the day, sun beating down on him. I'm sure she was in shade a lot of the time too, but still extremely hot snake. So what I did, because I'm not gonna say, oh, this snake is too hot, you should take it home right away, because then I would just be the jerk, right? I'd be like this jerk who tried to tell her how to take care of her snake. I'm not gonna do that. So I took the snake, and it was lethargic for one thing, and immediately trying to hide and bury himself into my skin. He sort of slowly though, right? Because he's super hot and just lethargic, and it was way too much for him, I think. And so I just said, I went, wow, he's really warm. Not judging, but I just made the comment, wow, he's really warm. And her response was, yeah, he loves it. So I made another sort of leading question. I said, what temperature do you keep rosy boas at? What are they, do they normally like this kind of temperature? And she goes, oh, I don't know. I don't have a thermometer in his tank. So we've got a keeper who doesn't know even what temp a rosy boa should be at. I said I think it should be like maybe somewhere between 80 and 90, but I don't know. I don't have a rosy boa, so I wanted to keep it where I was asking her about the snake, and me not knowing. I didn't want to be telling her, but I'm doing this to just sort of drop some hints that the snake is way too hot. I don't think it ever got through to her though. So I just said, I think it's supposed to be 80, 80 on the cold side, 90 on the warm, but I'm not sure. I don't have rosy boas. And that's true. I don't know if that's even true or not. If you're a rosy boa expert and you know what their temp should be, let me know. Maybe 98.6 and 95 to 100 degrees sun beating down is fine for a rosy boa. I don't think it is though. I think that snake was hot and it seemed lethargic and stressed. 4 days all day at a festival was not a good thing for that snake, I don't think. So I'll say this, I do a lot of festivals throughout the year. I perform at them, and I see a lot of people with snakes at these festivals. The majority of them are like the woman with the rosy boa. It's rare that I see a snake that's totally okay with being out in public and is not showing signs of stress. Let's talk about the phrase, my snake loves to ... This is something that I use this phrase a lot. The other day or not the other day, but maybe a few weeks ago, there was a video where I was talking about snakes climbing, and I said ball pythons love to climb. And I don't mean that literally, the term love in a literal sense. What I mean is, given the choice to climb or not climb, oftentimes ball pythons will have a tendency to climb if they're choosing to do that. I also say the inspector loves his warm side hide. And the reason is that he tends to be in his warm side hide about 22 hours a day, 6 days a week. So that's what I mean when I say he loves that. I don't think that he actually loves it. There's still a ton that we don't know about snakes' brains and the structures. There's a lot that we're learning, like right now in sort of recent years, that we've learned about reptile brains that's really cool. But I still think that it's probably a stretch to say my snake loves this and literally mean that they love that thing. So when I say it, it means if given the choice, they have a tendency to do this. I've heard recently a lot of people say, somebody said my snake loves to go in public. So I've heard that in people that have seen that recent video and want to tell me that they disagree, and that's okay. But they're saying my snake loves to go in public. I've also recently heard people say my snake loves to swim in the bathtub. My question to those people is, what is the body language that you are observing that tells you that snake loves to do that? Because what we're doing in those situations is we're forcing an animal into a situation. We're putting them into a situation and making them deal with it, which we all do. I mean, I take my snakes outside. That's me forcing the animal to go outside and having them deal with it. I have to look at their body language and see if they're stressed or not. But I can't tell if they love it or not. I don't have that kind of experience, I guess, to know if my snake loves it. So my question to those people, and I never asked that question, but I'm asking it now, what is the body language that tells you that your snake loves to be in public? Is it that they're around your neck and not striking at everybody that walks by, or not striking at your face? What is the body language that tells you that your snake loves to swim in the bathtub? Is it because you put them in the bathtub and they do this all around the water, and that seems like a puppy that's sort of rambunctious and going crazy? That means that the puppy is having fun and probably loves what they're doing. But is that what it means for a snake? Snakes don't make facial expressions, and they don't make noise other than the occasional hiss. So they do have body language that expresses stress, and if you know the subtleties of snake body language well enough, you can determine whether your snake is stressed or not. But that's, for me, the point of, okay, my snake is tolerating this experience. It's not stressing them out. I can't go beyond tolerating. I can't even say that the snake likes the experience. That doesn't mean that he dislikes it, but I can't go beyond my snake either is very stressed right now and I need to change the situation, or my snake is currently tolerating this situation that I have put him in. Using those same two examples that I just used, in the wild, ball pythons don't have a tendency to go swimming. In the wild, ball pythons don't have a tendency to go into a city and slither down a crowded street during a festival and hang out with a whole bunch of people. They're going to stay hidden and away from people. So that's not something that they choose to do normally. Echo, my super dwarf reticulated python, is in her new enclosure now. There's going to be an enclosure video coming out soon. But I've given her a big water dish and what I'm calling a swimming pool, which is sort of a little square dish, because reticulated pythons do have a tendency to swim. So far, I have not seen her use it yet, so I wouldn't say she loves to swim. But if I saw her choose to go in that pool a lot, and I saw her in the water all the time and stuff was wet all the time, I'd be like, oh yeah, she loves to swim. That just means that she has a tendency to do it if given the option. To me, anyway. So, feel free to disagree with that. That's okay. These are just, again, my opinions on the subject based on whatever. Based on, I guess, what's in my brain right now. All right, completely separate snake behavior situation. This is something that happened with one of my snakes that I've never seen this behavior with. And I ended up, at the end, having to put that snake in a situation that they usually don't like to be in. But I did it for a very good reason. So here's what happened. The other night, or the other day, I had the inspector in with Damara in her tub for what's probably going to be the last time of the season. I just wanted to get one last lock in before she ovulates. And he was locked up with her for about 40 hours. That evening, I went in to pull him out. Like I opened the tub and they were unlocked. And so I was like, oh, they're done. They're, 40 hours of a lock is fine. I'll pull him out now and put him back in his enclosure. So I went in to pull him out and he started kind of bumping me, which he's done before. That's sort of breeding male behavior. I think it happens more often with reticulated pythons and other species. It's not as bad with ball pythons, but he was bumping me a little bit and clearly didn't want to leave. But I'm like, come on, man, you're going to go back in your enclosure. So I pulled him out. He didn't like it. He was really stiff. I put him back in here and he threw an absolute fit. Just throwing his body everywhere and knocking over plants, and he almost knocked over his water bowl, and he's aggressively surfing the glass, trying to find a way out. Not just stressed behavior. I mean, obviously this is extreme stress behavior, but not just normal glass surfing that occasionally snakes will do if they're stressed. I never see him glass surf, but he was looking for a place to get out. So I thought, man, and I'm going to show you some footage of it because I took footage. And by the way, when I started rolling the camera, it was after he had calmed down a little bit, believe it or not. He was even worse before I decided to roll the camera. But you'll see me work this through and talk it out. But my initial plan was I'm going to try to feed him and get a meal in his belly, and maybe that'll make him relax and go back into his hide. And ultimately, I decided that was probably the wrong move. So you'll see me work that out. So here's the footage. This boy is going nuts right now. I've never seen him act like this, but I pulled him out of his girlfriend's enclosure. They had been locked for, I would say 36 hours plus. Probably more like 40 hours. And they were unlocked, so I pulled him out, and he threw a fit and started throwing arches, things like that. And then I closed the enclosure, and he wrecked a couple plants. There's a plant down there that's now on the ground that's dead. He knocked over this plant that's laying right there, and he's doing this body language, which is just crazy, throwing a fit. So I'm thawing out a meal for him because he could eat. I'm not sure if he will or not. He may refuse just because he might just be totally in breeding mode and just mad that he was pulled out. But I'm going to try to feed him so that he gets a full belly and goes and calms down. He has not struck at me. He didn't try to strike. He hasn't struck at the glass. He gets keyed up when I put my hand there. He gets keyed up to see what that is. And this nutso behavior. I don't know if he's keyed up because he's really looking for food or if he cares about food right now or anything, but my thought was that I'm going to try to feed him so that he'll relax. I don't think that's the right move, though. I think what I'm going to try to do is pull him out and put him back in with Damara. He didn't try to strike at me, but I wouldn't be surprised if he did. So that's why I'm filming this, because none of my snakes have ever bit me. But I feel like he is a little bit crazy. I've never seen him act like this before, all this arching and everything. So when I pull him out, this could be a thing. So he's keyed up kind of on me right now. I don't think he cares about food at all. I'll wait till his head's on the other side. There we go. Because he'll try to jump out right away. He's just throwing arches like crazy. Still didn't try to bite. Put him back in with his girlfriend. Because that's what he wants, I think. So the decision to put him back in with Damara was the right one. He calmed down, and I watched him a little bit through the tub. I've got clear tubs, so I could see him through the front, and he moved around a bit, but was totally calm. You never know really what's in a snake's brain, but you can sort of figure it out based on what's just happened. And if the snake is going nuts, you can kind of make an educated guess. So I think that was the right move. He spent the night in there with Damara, and then I went to pull him out the next morning, hoping that was enough. And as I pulled him out, he was doing a bit of the bumping again and stuff like that. And I was like, man, he's going to go crazy again. So here's what I decided to do. The inspector does not like being outside. I occasionally will try and take him outside, and he doesn't like that big open sky. The way I can tell that is his body language. He curls. He doesn't ball up, but he definitely squeezes my hand a little bit more. His body becomes totally stiff. He looks for a place to hide. He doesn't really like it. So what I decided to do is take him outside, but not under the big open sky. I actually took him into Kent's Corner is what I did. Oh my God, you better be joking. That corner is shady and it's got an awning over it. And I didn't want him to be frightened or stressed out, but I wanted to just sit there with him outside and give him an experience that was significant enough that maybe it would pull him out of that breeding mode. So I brought him out there and sat down on a chair and let him, it took him only a few minutes before he relaxed. I mean, I think it was because I didn't take him way out into the sun and the big sky and everything. I was just sort of sitting there with him. But he relaxed and started exploring around, and I kept him in my hands, but I let him do some exploring and do that for about 15 minutes. And that worked because when I brought him back in, I put him in his enclosure, and he cruised around for a minute like he usually does, and then went right back into his warm side hide. And he has been there ever since. I'm going to feed him tonight. That was weird behavior from him. Again, that was behavior that I would expect from a reticulated python that's breeding or something like that. And I think I just tried to pull him out too soon. Damara may have been done, but he clearly wasn't, and he wanted to stay in with the female. Now, the way I interpreted what was possibly going on in his brain turned out to probably be correct, just because it corrected his behavior. It calmed him down and got him back into sort of his normal mode. But you still never know exactly what's going on in their brain. You know, there could be something physically, internally happening with him, like a medical problem, that's making him act like that I would have never known, you know. But I'll say this, if I didn't know what I was doing, if I was a brand new keeper or didn't understand snakes, I might go, you know, put him in the enclosure, watch him freak out like that, and go, oh my gosh, he hates his bioactive enclosure. He loves to be in Damara's enclosure. I'm going to let him live with Damara from now on. That would be a terrible idea, right? That would be the worst possible thing. But sometimes people interpret things that way. And I think it's important to understand, if you use the term love, like I do, with snakes, that you don't literally think that the snake loves the thing. And also, I think it's important that when you're doing that, when you're saying, my snake prefers this, whether you say love, like, prefers, whatever, it's because you've given them a choice to do that thing, and they're choosing to do it. There is no way to tell if they prefer something that you are forcing them into. A bathtub, outside, in public, bringing them out of their enclosure, picking them up and bringing them out of their enclosure. I do that with my snakes. If I want to pull them out for a video or to handle them or whatever, I pull them out. But I also give them the choice a lot of times, and I know which snakes prefer to come out and move around and which ones don't. And I'll tell you, with ball pythons, most of them don't. I only have 3 or 4 maybe that regularly, if I leave their tub open, they'll venture out. I hope you enjoyed this video. It went longer than I expected, as all my videos do. Kent, do you want to do the sign off? Hit the like button and the subscribe if you want to. And my advice, if you have a snake in your house and it's going crazy, is run and never stop. Do not stop running. Thanks for watching, folks. Not a bad sign off, Kent.